Shalom, shalom, everybody. Ariel, Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com. Getting things right off camera there, so things on camera here will be right. It's always the way it's got to be. Hey, welcome to our classes. This is going to be lesson number 6 in our 2021 version of the book Ohel Moed, written by Rabbi Yosef Menachem back in the 1550s. Remember the good 1550s roaring times? Remember them like yesterday, right? Maybe in a previous life, you never know. But anyway, get serious. Tonight, I'm going to discuss with you an important topic. Something that the good rabbi referred to in the language of the old Kabbalah as the do Partzufim. Do is actually an Aramaic word. We know it in its more Greek or English word is dual, right? Meaning two. Whereas if you talk in the later Kabbalah of Chaim Vital, we talk of 4 worlds, the famous Atzilut, Beri'ah, Yitzra, and Asiya. Well, I got to tell you, for the most part, when people talk about these things, very frustrating. They read books and they can repeat back what the books say. But like my teacher, Rabbi Meir Levi, Alav Shalom, taught me years and years ago in Yerushalayim, a lot of people who read the books really just don't know what they mean. And I think that's very, very important. And tonight's class, like this entire series, is going to be based upon explaining to you actual details of things. Now, in a previous class, I introduced you to some material, which I am going to release probably as early as tomorrow. This here, you can see it here. This will be a copy of the PDF. It's a translation from one of the deepest Kabbalistic texts called Shorashei Hashamot, the source of names. It's available as a Hebrew volume from any of the Hebrew bookstores online for less than $50. Whereas I've seen, I'm not going to express my bewilderment, a 5-volume translation of the Shorashei Shemot available for like thousands and thousands of dollars. It makes my eyes bulge out of my head, cartoon style, that someone would actually have the gall to charge that kind of money for a simple translation that pretty much any Israeli could provide. Well, in my version, I take a section of the book. Not only do I translate it for you, and it's about holy names and how to use them. And this is where I'm going to show you exactly not only how to use a holy name, but why it works. We're going to comprehensively dispel the myth of magic. There's no such thing as magic. And any of you who want to continue in your beliefs in magic, you'll know very well why our Torah forbids magic. Not because it's not real, it's because it's just not what people think it is. Remember the Hatumim, the magicians in Egypt. They had power. They understood things. But it's not hocus pocus. It's not Harry Potter. It's not just what people think. I'm actually, mumbling on my words here. Why? Because all of what we think today is magic. It's really a cause and effect, but in its own parameters and dimensions of reality, which we don't take into account. So, for example, the Rabbinate is sitting right off of here, off the side, watching what I'm doing. If I was to pick up a ball right now and throw it to her, she'd catch it, and she'd throw it back to me. Now, you on camera would not see her catching the ball. All you would see is the ball magically coming out of the air, and I catch it. Oh, magic. No, it's not magic. And just because you do not see the cause and effect, because it's not in your parameter of vision, doesn't make it not subject to its own laws of physics. The laws of physics are energy. Energy, life, light, consciousness, all of these things, they're one and the same. I'm going to make this readily available. Normally, this is the type of material that I provide exclusively for our private supporting Kosher Torah School student body, those who support us with their generous gifts of $50 a month and more. Okay? This is the kind of stuff I provide for them. But after reviewing, this is 20 pages long. After I reviewed this, I said to myself, you know something? This has got to get out there. You've always heard me kid around where I say Moses said, let my people go. I say, let my people know. So I'm going to put this out there. And it is copyrighted material, but needless to say, I want it propagated. I want you to see and learn how to realistically use holy names. Not magic, not hocus pocus, not with this foolish mythology that people say it's Kabbalah ma'asit and therefore it's evil and forbidden. I roll my eyes at the ignorance of people who make such a statement. Ignorance. Why? I don't know if they just don't know the original Hebrew of the words that they're saying. They certainly don't understand the Kabbalah of it. And I question even if they know the halakha of it. I mean, the Arizal says very clearly what is and what is not Kabbalah ma'asit, as do our holy sages. And I emphasize to you, if you are walking the Jewish path, if you wish to embrace Torah, there is only one embrace. We call that Orthodox Judaism. And the most absolutely vital course of study in Orthodox Judaism. No, it's not Kabbalah. And no, it's not Gemara. It is halacha, Jewish law. And you cannot just learn halacha from the condensed versions of the codes of law, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, whether it's the Gansfried version or the Lubavitch version of, the Shulchan Aruch Harav and all the rest. You have to know and understand the parameters and flow of how halacha works. It says in the Gemara, since the days of the destruction of the temple, the only place where God is found, all right, Ein la Hashem ba'olamo ela, what we call the Arba Amot of halakha. And that's actually a Kabbalistic code. Four square meters of halakha, which means if you want to understand, in quote, the will of God, and you can only experience it within the way of God. And the way of God is not revealed through prophecy, thus saith the Lord, because halakha, if you recognize the word, is related to the ways in this world. This world we call the Sefirat Malchut, the world of Asiya. Hey, one of those worlds we're going to talk about in just a minute. And why is this important? Because just like I said to you, there's no such thing as magic. We understand the natural world. What we don't understand, we call the supernatural world. We have the world of physics. What we don't understand, we call metaphysics. Well, the definition of supernatural or metaphysics is not a black and white line written, indelibly. It's a fluctuation based upon what we can understand and comprehend. So, as it says, let my people know, that is what our Kosher Torah School is all about. So this essay, which I actually give you the pronunciation of the holy name. You see it? It's right there. Yeah, I'm going to teach you how to use it and what to do with it. And the name of this essay is called The Holy Name from the book, Shorashei Shemot, and a practical guide to understanding and using holy names. Look for it on KosherTorah.com. It'll be available on our Patreon page for our supporters. And I'll put links to it on Facebook, possibly YouTube, and get it out there as best we can. Let my people know. You guys, my people. Alrighty. Tonight, Another essay. You'll notice that I made a commitment to myself that I believe it is more important that material and teachings be documented in writing as opposed to just being submitted in video. Now, I know I'm going against the grain of modern times. I see all the people today, everybody and their brothers now got a YouTube channel, and everyone is more savvy and fancy, and everyone is looking like a really class act television program because, well, that's the way people want to learn. Well, if that's the way you want to learn, let me tell you something. Here at the KosherTorah School, we're still old school, and you ain't going to see me do that. Now, could I do that? Very possibly, but I intentionally choose not to. Why? Because I want our time together to be personal, real, and interactive. For those who become our supporting students, remember the $50 a month level per month, I have a condition, believe it or not, with that. Yeah, I have a condition to receive your money, which is I have to not only receive your support, but you also have to be willing to receive mine. We talk to one another. And we have supporters literally from around the world. And I say, call me, get me on the phone, and let's chat. Let me get to know you, however little I can in the short times we chat. And when you have a question, you call me, you email me, and we talk. Now, I can't talk with everybody as everyone would like me to. My phone number is out there. It's on the website, and people do call me all the time. And I'm sorry that I can't give everyone the time that they want me to give them, but I have to reserve that time and be there for those who are there for me. Everyone else, hey guys, you're always welcome to be in touch. Send me an email, arielsadok@gmail.com. But please forgive me if I can't give you more than 2-3 minutes on the phone, okay? That's just the way it is. Now, let's talk about the worlds. You know what the worlds are? Let's sum it up in one word: reality. Now, I'm already starting to write about the worlds. I sent out the introduction to this piece today. For those of you on our KosherTorah.com general email list, you received the introduction. Abia, it's the abbreviation of the four worlds, Atzilut, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah, from the later Kabbalah of Hamital. And I call them the four interdimensional worlds of human psychic interaction. Nice fancy way, but very important that we describe it correctly. Now, the Ohel Moed, here in section 21, is going to talk about what he refers to as the dew Partzufim. So let's begin there and expand outward. Our world today, as I think everybody knows, tries so hard to be rational and what they call scientific. But if you look at it, there is an undertone to all of this, in quote, rationalism and science, which is clearly and definitively and it is anti-religious. It is specifically and intentionally anti-spiritual, anti-God, or anti-anything of that nature. And that is why the philosophy of that persuasion, and it goes back, it's nothing new. This can go back to people like Baruch Spinoza. It can be looked at the likes of the modern atheism of certain scientists today. They all love to pontificate from their point of, or their perch, what they believe of authority, to say, well, what we see and what we know is, and therefore we discount A, B, C, D. You know, people have been discounting A, B, C, D forever. If you remember, we had the likes of Galileo. They tried to discount him. They tried to discount Copernicus and all the rest. Well, we have known since the most ancient of days. If you look in all cultures around the world, every society, however primitive, however aborigine, however advanced, every single culture, one single commonality. Everyone knew we were not alone. That we live in a multiplicity of dimensions in which we interacted on a regular basis. Now, to their credit, you will see modern science no longer speaks so definitively of a universe, but now you find many people speaking of a multiverse. They recognize that there's something else out there. Now, just for your conspiratorial interests, let me just tell you this, that I know, and don't ask me to elaborate because I won't. Our governments are very well aware of what's out there. They've known now for years because they had close encounters. All right, Roswell was real and everything else. I'm not going to get into the details, but I will digress to tell you one thing. Recently, I've been doing my own research and studies, like I always do, and I've come across the writings of Robert Monroe. Robert Monroe, of course, is the founder of the famous Monroe Institute. These are the guys who created the Hemi-Sync sound tapes and the like. And Mr. Monroe passed away 25 years ago. This is a guy, I read his stuff with a smile. Because somehow, somewhere, this is the guy who like really pioneered what we call out-of-the-body experiences. And he's written many a book, and he tells all the things that he experienced and the places he went, and I smiled. Why? Because I recognized the authenticity of his experiences. He created his own vocabulary to describe it, levels 2, levels 3, and all the rest, but we understand what they are. He experienced this Partzufim. Partzuf means a face, or if you will, the dual worlds, okay? The higher worlds. Now, when we speak of two worlds, we really shouldn't say worlds, because we have, in our understanding of the word world, as something physical or finite. Now, you could say world, okay, you can understand it being a universe. And you can say, okay, there's two universes. Well, that's easy to understand. There's the physical universe and the spiritual universe. But did anybody ever really stop to pause and say, what the heck is spiritual in the first place? Now, we can expand in light of modern understandings of science and say, okay, we know that light, matter, vibrates. When matter vibrates under the speed of light, it becomes mass. It has form. It becomes physical. It vibrates above the speed of light. It becomes energy. And what is energy? Well, we know that there are hyperlight particles, just like there are sublight particles. And we can postulate scientifically to state that the hyperlight universe, if it's made up of particles, will therefore have, in quote, beings or forms made up of hyperlight particles, which form whatever forms there. Well, we've always known this. There's, as Solomon said, "Ein kol hadash tachat hashemesh," nothing new under the sun. Is this other dimension under the sun or above it? Remember, we're not talking about the sun in the physical sky, right? We're talking about realities. Ever since ancient times, everybody's always known something's out there. Modern times, they say we've got to be rational, and they try to discount the reality. They'll say, well, it's abnormal for you to believe in this and that. Oh, really? If you go look at studies, or if you go look at statistics of people from literally around the world, you will find the vast majority of individuals will claim that at one time or another in their lives, they have had some kind of metaphysical or supernatural experience, whatever it is. It could be as simple as a deja vu, a premonition, dream, or anything and everything of the kind. Now, if the vast majority of people from around the world are experiencing this, then how can you call it abnormal when the majority defines what is normal? So there you have it. The reality of what we seek is pretty much self-evident. But there seems to be, an agenda to keep us away, keep us disconnected, keep us unaware. It's kind of like if I want to distract you, I'll take you and put you in a closet in your house, and I close the door, and I say, oh, no, there's nothing outside. This is it. This is the whole world, but I'm in a closet. No, you're not in a closet. This is everything. There's nothing, there's no door, there's no nothing. But some of us might see a crack of light. What's that? Nothing. Yes, it is something. And for those who have the courage, you're going to turn around, you're going to see the crack of light, you're going to find the little doorknob, you're going to open up that doorknob, and you're going to walk out into a whole greater world. Now, this higher world of which we speak, this du Partzufim, in the language of Rabbi Menachem, our author, he refers to it in classical Kabbalistic language in a male and female relationship to, let me say in comparison to what we know and understand, traditionally referred to as the heavens and the earth, as referred to in the Bible. The heavens are the spiritual, and the earth is the physical. Now, what on earth are the heavens? A question I've asked many a time to people. When we say that Moses went up to heaven to receive the Torah, now remember, Moses did not part out of his body like did Enoch or Eliyahu. He was in the body, and he stayed in the body, and he didn't eat and drink for 40 days, 40 nights, and he went somewhere. Where did he go? Well, if you listen to some of my peers on the Ancient Alien program, they'll say, he went to another planet, but he didn't really meet with the Creator. He just met with those people who are saying that they were. Eric, okay, thank you. Eric, you're a dear friend, but you don't know Hebrew well. Sorry, in all due respect. But with that being said, where did Moses go? He went somewhere. Now, when we talk about the nature of the energetic reality, we know and understand something about that ourselves. Because a point that's made very clearly in the later Kabbalah, we have, if you remember, 5 names for the human soul. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, Yechida. But a soul, what is a soul? Well, let's put it bluntly. A soul is a level of consciousness and awareness. We live in this physical world. I hope we see that. Well, the level of soul, consciousness, awareness, that corresponds to this physical world, we call our nefesh, level of consciousness. Now, we're also told, remember, we had 4 others. We have a ruach, we have a neshama. Where are they? Well, they're kind of like right here. Because even though we refer to 5 levels of soul or 5 levels of consciousness, they're not disconnected from one another. They're not separate entities. It's not like I have 5 separate glasses, 5 separate bowls, or 5 separate books, each by one name. No, it's one and the same. So, my nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechid, it's all the same. So, where are they? Well, they're kind of like me. Now, the question is, I actually teased about this on Facebook prior to recording this class. I asked, where are you? You probably don't even know. Well, what part of me is the question that I have to ask, where is it? Now, that part of me in this reality, that's right here. What about the other parts of me? Those other parts of me are each in their own respective reality. However, being that I'm kind of like in the closet with the door closed, I'm not paying attention to everything else going on elsewhere. And therefore, everything else going on elsewhere, I've pushed out of my attention, pushed out of my consciousness, and therefore I delegated to that which I now call the unconscious. So my ruach, my neshama, and all the rest, they reside in my unconscious. Now, how do I access that if I so choose? This is where meditation, mind expansion techniques, and the like come into play. Because, yes, we do have within our physical body another body, an energetic body, that is popularly referred to today as an astral body. Rabbi Chaim Vital in the Shara Kedusha calls it your chalukah de Rabbanan, your rabbinic garment. Same thing. What is it? Well, it's that part of you that exists in those other two Partzufim. So when it says that God created the heavens and the earth and He created us, we exist simultaneously there and here. And we have a physical body corresponding to here. And I suspect it's an energy body which exists in, quote, over there. Now, where is there? Stop thinking of over there in some kind of physical way, that it's somewhere on the other side of the Hubble telescope. Over there is right here. But it's here in maybe a different dimension. Somebody just the other day asked me, well, where are these other dimensions? Well, aside from quantum physics that say there's 10 or 11 dimensions, 26 dimensions, whatever, they're probably right here. I think that if you study a little bit about subatomic physics and the like, when you talk about atoms, and they'll talk about the neutrons and the protons and the electrons, you remember high school stuff? And they'll say that the distance between one atom to another atom is, I don't know, curiously, maybe an equivalent in distance between one solar system and another. Gee whiz. Is the atomic structure a microscopic universe? Is our entire universe a macrocosm of a microcosm? Or possibly a microcosm of an even a greater macrocosm? Thoughts to think about. Irrelevant from our present point of view, because rather than look at these things externally, theoretically, we should be concerning ourselves, I wouldn't say worried, but concerning ourselves to experience them individually, personally. Throughout history, we've always had travelers. I'm not talking about them from the other side who come here. I'm talking about us. Because remember the whole thing, Garden of Eden, tree of knowledge stuff? Well, we weren't always disconnected. We weren't always with our head hiding in the closet. And to this very day, we teach, especially here at the KosherTorah school, how to get your head out of the closet and experience for one's self. But the problem is teaching not only what to do, but what to expect from it. This is actually going back to the reason why I wrote this essay. You remember about the holy names I talked about just moments ago? Why did I write this? Because I'll confess to you, I am frustrated that I see so much Kabbalistic literature that's available in all the languages, and so little understanding of what it really means. Very, very frustrating. They have wonderful books available. I think that the entire Partzufim of Ramak is available in French. I believe I've seen that. The Rabbanit recently received a number of Abulafia's works in French. She picked up out of France. And we have numerous books available. Some which are translated by questionable sources. But again, here's the problem. You can take words and translate them without really ever understanding what those words mean. And I'll give an example. For many of you, you know that Rabbanit is from France. And in French, like in English, we have our vernacular sayings, and we have our colloquialisms and the like. And the Rabbanit can say something as a colloquial in French, translate, I don't understand it because I don't get the meaning of it. I can say a colloquial in English that she might not have heard of before, and I have to explain it. I mean, this is not just between her and I. This is the way it is with everybody, every language. That's just the way language is. Words just don't always translate meaning. So, for example, in Hebrew, we can say a moron. You know what a moron is? Someone who's brainless. In Hebrew, we'll call him a rosh karuv. A rosh karuv actually means a cabbage head. When was the last time you called somebody a cabbage head? It doesn't make sense in English. But you call them the rosh karuv. Oh, we have other more appropriate words in Hebrew, which we won't. In Arabic, which, rabbis, you try to be mindful of what we say. But okay, you get the point what I'm trying to get at here. When you come to understand these other worlds, you can't read about this in a book and say, well, it's like this and like that. See, this is the thing I'm going to show you. This is Robert Monroe's book about his journeys out of the body. All right. I recognize from his experiences that they were legit, but I also smiled at the nature of the words that he used to describe them. And I said, it's a shame that this man coming out of a Catholic tradition had no access to exposure to Jewish and Kabbalistic sources. Now you could say, what makes Mr. Monroe so significant? Well, go study the history of the Monroe Institute, and you'll discover that our government and the Central Intelligence Agency had some interest in Mr. Monroe's work and apparently interacted with him. And that's been for what? Oh my goodness, 50, 60 years. So when I tell you that our governments are doing stuff, you ain't got the slightest imagination of what they're able to do today. America, Russia especially, the Chinese, Israel, probably India as well. I've heard that the British and French are not too far behind, and there are others as well, especially the Bulgarians and the Czechs and the like, doing some really wild stuff. Why? Because that which we used to call the supernatural ain't so supernatural after all. And they're beginning to understand that which we call the Atzilutic and Periodic and Yetziratic and Asiatic worlds are not just these theoretical domains that are spoken about in literature. They is real. Israel. What does that mean? That is what we're here to talk about. The higher reality, the other dimension. We understand today in science a concept which we call the beginning of the universe. We call it the Big Bang. And the question is often asked, well, what came before the Big Bang? Well, there are a number of theories about that. You can go Google that online. One of them is the parent universe theory, that there was another bigger universe and somehow they were existing side by side, and they're fluctuating like this, and somehow this universe over here, which was full, bumped into this universe here, which was empty, all right, empty universe, and boop, went in and filled it with matter, and that was the Big Bang. And you might understand by my little graphic there, a subtle innuendo, probably not so subtle innuendo. That's exactly the language that the Kabbalah uses. That the parent universe and our universe have a relationship, a magnetic relationship, which we have come to personify as sexual, male and female. Now, when we look at the Sephirotic ascent, we associate this physical world, we call it Asiyah, the world of the doing, the world of matter. And the next higher realm to it is called Yetzirah. Yetzirah is the world of personified emotions, where in which what you feel becomes real. You build with feelings there, like we build with matter here. So what you feel becomes real. And what your deepest heart feeling is where you are. You feel love, you might be in a place called heaven. You feel hate, you might be in a place called hell. Your feelings dictate. But the pull and the tug between one universe and the other is magnetic. And that magnetism is what we understand as sexual. It's a vertical sexuality between a higher dimension and a lower dimension. But because most of us can't make that higher and lower vertical connection between the two dimensions, that same magnetism that inverts from a vertical power to a horizontal one. And that is why we have such a proclivity towards promiscuity and sexuality in our world today. Do you ever notice everybody, we're like rabbits. Everybody is all over the place. We are completely deconstructing the morals of civilization, Western and otherwise, just to justify sexual depravities, the likes of which we see all over the place. And you have to understand why this is the case. What's the big deal about sexuality? It's because we are taking what is a necessary vertical polarity of energy, and because we can't connect to it, it's inverted to horizontal. We're seeking to connect. We're seeking to bond. And for those who are promiscuous physically, they especially have learned a very, very simple lesson. Just because you can be promiscuous doesn't lead to fulfillment or happiness or any kind of inner sense of completion. As a counselor, as you know, for 30 years, I've dealt with people promiscuous from all different walks of life. And the one thing that I found as a pretty much general rule, the more physically promiscuous an individual has been, male or female, the more unfulfilled they are emotionally and spiritually in life. Why? Because if you take energy which is meant to go vertical and you dissipate it horizontally, it becomes weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker, farther and farther and farther away till nothing's left. And you don't get done what you need to get done. Sorry, it's science. It's energy. It's you. The story of you. Now let's turn to souls. You are in that higher world right now. That energetic higher reality, which we call the heavens, is your emotional self, your astral body, which makes up or is made up of your energetic emotional self. And if you were to project out of body, you're going to float around and be attracted to whatever your true emotional energy is like. So if inside you are full of, I don't know, fill in the blank, good or evil, right or wrong, light or dark, depravity or holiness, wherever emotionally you are at inside you, if you project, and actually Robert Monroe experienced this himself. Remember, this is Mr. Secular trying to figure this out. He got it. He was subject to the natural, not supernatural laws of this. And this is where you go. So therefore, this is the underlying reality that when we leave this physical body, we leave the Asiatic or Nefesh consciousness, and we absorb into the Ruach consciousness, into the higher astral plane, then the laws of emotion take place, or I should say take effect, or become dominant. And emotionally, you go where you're gonna go. This is what we call the lower Garden of Eden, and it's a personification of where you're at, and you will experience it as either heaven or hell. Actually, Monroe, he figured that out. He called it level 2. He has all these different levels. He goes up like level 27 or something like that. Okay, fine. Everybody's got their own terminologies. Whatever. The point is not the words. The point is the experience. Now, if you are an emotionally based personality, and there are people who are emotionally based, that is what we call, you have more of a ruach consciousness, a ruach personality, if you will. Your emotions are going to dominate you. And that is why you will find in books like the Sha'arei Kedusha of Rabbi Chaim Vital, he says, before you start practicing all the prophetic ascent and astral travel, get your emotions in check. This has been the point of Jewish values and morals and the Musar all along, right? You got to get yourself in check. Now, there is not a righteous person in the world who doesn't have something going on. But even so, you got to have balance. You got to have discipline. You got to have structure. Today, our society teaches us complete disregard for any focus of emotional balance. And that's why the whole world is flipping violently from side to side with this emotional energy. You know what happens if you flip things side to side? Eventually it flips over. It's a metaphor, which means that eventually nature is going to kick in and reestablish balance. So the more emotionally based our society becomes, the more imbalanced and out of sync with the natural order it becomes, which will provoke nature, Mother Nature, a good old mama, Malchut Shekhinah, to respond. And that's where din and judgment and everything else comes. It's not really punishment, as we might so anthropomorphically think. It's just a reboot, a reschedule, a realignment. So, Ruach consciousness. When we focus on our emotional selves, and we could use the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei or any other type of meditative technique to really get in touch with our inner feelings. What am I really, really, really feeling? And when I can tap into that, which is usually not an intellectual process, feelings, they're not intellect, they're feelings. And if you allow your imagination or mind to flow into that, you might start to have, ideas, impressions, thoughts, possibly even daydreams or visions and the like from that source. That is how you can tap into what we call Ruach consciousness. And there are entire dimensional domains wherein which Ruach consciousness dominates. There are indigenous entities that exist in this emotional dimension, wherein which everything about them is emotion. We call them angels, or for that matter, demons. Malachim and Shadim. Now, really should throw the Shadim up in there because they're not really of this level. This is the level we call Yetzirah, mind you. And the angels therein are emotional beings. They are personified emotion. And when we interact with them, they interact with us based on an emotional simpatico. So that's why when you're dealing with angels, you have to be properly, energetically aligned at that level. Now, there is a higher dimension, a dimension wherein which when all of the emotions are balanced, you can shift into a more subtle, a higher frequency of thought, mind. This level is very much outside and above the heavens and the earth. We call that Biri'ah. We call that the place of your neshama consciousness, because it's like taking you out of the universe, out of causality, out of reincarnation and the Gilgul, out of karma, and giving you an insight into home. We call this the upper Garden of Eden. We call this Teshuvah. We call this by many different words, including the Olam Haba. Now, of course, for those of you who are familiar with Judaism, you know that we have a concept, a very peculiar, strange one, which we consider emphatically important. The resurrection of the dead. You got to figure, okay, if we die, we go up to heaven. We're going up. Why do we have to come back down? Ooh, it's the opposite. The neshama is what comes down, bonding with the ruach and the nefesh, integrating the worlds and creating harmony. So the resurrection isn't to this physical world in this physical way as it is right now. In other words, you don't resurrect to have a physical body just like this one to eventually die. No, it's a combination and merging of worlds, which is the synchronization and the ultimate goal of things. Neshama, consciousness. This is the place, the goal. We claim that this is where the source of the neshama comes from, even though our Torah comes from Tiferet, which is the Yetzirah world. So here we have the underlying secret of the unity of what we call the source of souls, the source of the Torah, and of course, how we merge those two into this world. So this is the three worlds. Biri'ah, Yetzirah, Asiyah. They're not out there somewhere on the other side of the Hubble telescope. They're all accessed right here and right now. Is there a physical side to Yetzirah? Yes, there is. Is there a physical side to Biri'ah? Yes, there is. But the nature of the physicality of these worlds might not be based on matter as we understand it, but on some other form of natural law that applies in those dimensions. So just like in this physical world of ours, we have form of matter. In the Yetziratic world, we have forms of emotions. How you feel is where you are at. Personified emotion, where you feel is where you go. Well, in Biri'ah, where in which your emotions are balanced, where you think is where you are at. Teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, if you recognize it. And therefore, you can just think a reality. And the Biri'atic reality is created by what you think. Yetziratic reality created by what you feel. Physical reality based upon what you build. Now, just like you can alter consciousness out of this physical dimension into the emotional dimension of Yetzirah, so with more subtlety, you can transcend and go to the higher Biri'atic realm of intellectual, rational consciousness. Maimonides speaks about this, and he says those who can tap into that, that's what we call Ruach HaKodesh. That is where you can tap into what we call Nevu'ah, from the Kabbalistic or the prophetic point of view, where this is psychic and intuitive. Now here's a big secret. Those who can tap into these higher realms of consciousness recognize their forms in these worlds. The Yetziratic world, you have a body of the form of your emotions. The Biri'atic world, the form of your thoughts. So if you can project your thoughts outside of your physical body and into one of these astral or neshama bodies, which, mind you, is made up of its own form, but it's not physical matter. It's a much more ethereal form. You can exist within those forms, traveling within those forms, within the dimensional realities of those domains, interacting with the dominions of those names, of those places. So, for example, you have the angelic realm in Yetzirah and what we call the archangel realm in Biri'ah, which are really the higher soul of the Neshamot. And we'll elaborate on that right now. Just, I guess when you meet them, you'll know them. But here's the interesting point. You see, if you're traveling in an emotional body, an astral body, which is still some semblance of form, but it's subject to your feelings. The way you feel that's the form that body takes. Or if you can get to the periodic level, the way you think, that's the way that body will form. This is the secret of what we call creating a tulpa, an artificial life form based upon the reconstruction which thought or feelings provide. So you might have heard throughout all the histories of all the different traditions of people who project their astral form in different structures other than human, as an animal or as a wolf to create a werewolf, or as a bat to maybe present itself as a vampire. These things have a lot more reality than the legends and the myths will allow. And no, they're not fantasy, make-believe, hocus-pocus Hollywood. There is a psychic reality to this that people from every culture around the world, throughout all of recorded history, have always known. Remember the famous story in the book of Exodus, right? We're coming up to Passover. So I'm sure you've read the story. Moses goes to Pharaoh and brings his mighty staff and throws it down and turns into a snake. And the magician said, we could do that. How did they do that? How did they do that? Did they go on the Amazon.Egypt and get the ancient books of how to play tricks? No. They understood the secrets of matter. And they could project their energetic form out of their body into an external item, such as a stick, and project the energetic essence into the form of a serpent, just like Moses did. And that's why Pharaoh, who was very well aware of psychic realities in higher dimensions, was not impressed. You're going to tell me you want to break my economy because you can perform psychic tricks? Yawn, yawn. And of course, we know that Moses' staff ate the staff, the snakes ate one or the other. Fine. All right. But that's not impressive at all. In the olden days, they understood that these things do operate. So to this day, when we want to see or experience or know the realities of these higher dimensional planes, think of it, if you will, like, well, dimensions. Here, I'll give an example. I've done this before. Let's make believe this paper here, this sheet here, it's kind of like two dimensions, all right? Let's say we exist in this domain here. And I can go anywhere in this paper, but I can't go off the paper, as you can see. So this whole domain here, I can go everywhere, explore up and down, all around, etc. Now, if I want to get from point A to point B, I got to go entirely across. But if I'm in a different dimension, like up here, looking down into it, point A to point B, what's the difference between here and here if I'm looking? If I'm looking, I see them both at the same time. That's how the higher dimension sees this dimension. It's the best example I can give, because remember how limited we are in the construct of finite space. So, Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, they're all here right now. When we lose the physical body, the Nefesh consciousness is absorbed, reabsorbed, back into the higher. So when you physically die, you kind of like blink your eye and you're looking down, you see a residual effect, you're kind of like in the same body. Our sages knew this. This is what we call the astral plane. And it's nothing really worrying about when you die. With one exception. You're in a Yitzhiratic reality. So how you feel, that's where you end up. So if you feel guilty or shame or bad, well, you're going to end up in that place called Gehinnom. And it's going to take you a little time to adjust. That's why we teach in our Torah tradition, there's no eternal heaven, no eternal hell. It's an adjustment period until such a time that you can realize the limitation of the construct of the moment and the place. Then you can hopefully evolve beyond to the Bariatic realm, or in most cases, people aren't ready to go up. They got to come back down. So that's why we call it a cycle or reincarnation. There's one higher level, the source of it all, We call that one Atzilut. It's the source. We can't say much about it because no one has access to it. Not anyone in the lower dimensions from the Beri'ah, Yetzirah, or Asiyah dimensions have direct access to Atzilut. We say that's the realm of the divine. That's the realm of God. And so, don't you see God? Well, not really. Now, each and every one of these dimensions is subjective in that it has the subjective parts of the whole in each and every one. So I can speak of the four worlds of Atzilut and Beri'ah and Yetzirah and Asiyah of the world of Asiyah, or the Atzilut, Beri'ah, Yetzirah, and Asiyah of the world of Yetzirah, and so on and so on. So ultimately, if we have four worlds by our categorization, our nomenclature, you have four subjective within four, and you have four within four, which creates 16. Curious that when Carl Jung outlined personality profile types, he also had 16 4x4. Coincidence? Connection? Jung was tapped into something very deep as well. He understood the nature of this higher realm. He called it the realm of the archetypes, of the collective unconscious. He tried to bring it into science, and psychiatry poo-pawed him and silenced him to this very day. And that's just the way it is. We have a prejudice of silence to disconnect us. If anything is a conspiracy, that is. But again, I reiterate, don't think that our governments don't know what's out there. They darn well know. Ever since Roswell, they knew. Because those with whom they're interacting, those with whom they've come in contact with, they've traveled and traversed these universes all the time. And they interact with us all the time. And that which we call shedim, they exist in that astral, and that's how they communicate, that's how they travel. And if you are of an emotional disposition to call upon one of these entities, they come to you. But remember, they don't see you as an equal. They see you as food. So that's why, for example, horizontal sexuality, which calls out and likes attract, can also attract the shadim. And they'll come in and interact, and we have a whole bunch of stories and stuff that happens at that level. Not very smart thing to do. So, for those people who really, really want to understand this through experience, well, then you're going to have to follow meditative techniques, focus on the whole, get a concept in your mind, rectify your emotional state, and get things in order. No, you're not going to be able to necessarily astral project in any fantasy way, but you can learn meditative techniques which will put you into experiences of higher realms and higher realities, which will need to be understood, or if you will, interpreted. That's exactly what our sages taught. Maimonides taught this exact same thing with regards to prophecy. So every prophet, when they experience the higher realms, they see things in a unique way, which is different from everyone else. Truth with Ezekiel, truth with Isaiah, truth with Daniel. And that's why we call this ascent process Ma'aseh Merkava, which is what we teach here at our KosherTorah school. And like the halakha says, can only be taught one-on-one. That's why I make myself available one-on-one to all the students who become supporters of our school, because we have to interact in this way to do the work we need to do. Sorry, guys, we're not just an academic organization like all the rest. If you want to read the books are out there. If you want to learn, practice, and experience, that's why you come here. Okay? So on that note, pretty much concluded what we need to discuss tonight. This essay on the use of holy names with all this kind of stuff, it's going to be available soon. Watch for it on KosherTorah.com. The greater expansion of the material about Abiyah, I'm writing it right now. That'll be available within the next few days. So, the wise words of Ohel, there's nothing more for me to say other than for you to go out and do it. Learn. Take some of the courses we have on practical techniques of meditation. See the materials that we have offered. Again, I emphasize, if your interest is exclusively academic, that's fine. Then we are no more or less an entertainment offering for you than anybody else. We're no different from your TV shows, if that's all you want is entertainment or information. But just in case you really want to do something more, expand and experience. Welcome to KosherTorah. Alrighty, guys. Let's stop on that note. You'll see here our angelic t-shirt here. Give those out as a free gift to those who make a donation of $180 to our school. Check out our KosherTorah emails for all that information, and we'll take it from there. Check out our course page and see what we have available for you. And if you like what we're doing here, do me a favor, you can go to our YouTube channel, subscribe there, click the like button, pass this around. Let my people know. This is what you say you wanted. Well, here you have your opportunity. Use it. Ariel Tzadok, KosherTorah School. I'll see you online. Shalom.